Population is one of the most important mechanics in EU5, but it's a little bit complex and just a little bit unclear. So here's how you increase it, your population growth, and maximize your population capacity. Population growth is the most important mechanic here. It affects how quickly your people multiply, and that directly affects the prosperity of your provinces, how good your economy is, and how many levies and soldiers you can raise for your armies. Let's start with prosperity. For every 5% prosperity you get in a province, you get plus 0.01% population growth. This does go inversely, so for every 5% negative prosperity you get, this would tick up to plus 0.025% population growth. This means that if you max out 100% prosperity, you get a bonus of plus 0.2%, and if you max out on minus 100% prosperity, you get a negative bonus of negative 0.5%. Now these numbers seem tiny, but how do they actually add up to big sums? Well, you have to consider that these numbers compound. So if you get your prosperity to increase your population by 0.2% in a year, in the next year, you've got a base of 102%, and then that 0.2% is then applied on that. So you quickly see exponential growth. However, don't forget, the Black Death arriving really early in EU5, you're going to have a big amount of population that you lose to that. So your baseline is going to be significantly reduced, and you need to do what you can to reduce the damage that you take from this disaster. Another big modifier you can get for your population growth is just being a rural settlement. It gives you 0.1% yearly. This quickly adds up, so you need to consider whether you want to urbanize really quickly or utilize this buff in your rural provinces. As you can see, when looking at our capital in this game as Naples, we don't have this rural buff. It's limited just to your rural settlements, not your cities and not your towns. However, this can be counteracted by the available free land mechanic. Now, it's not very clear in-game what this means. What actually it means, it's your current population in proportion to your population capacity. And if you've got a big old differential, then your population will increase quickly to fill that gap, as more people are coming in to fill those free provinces and free buildings. As you can see, our town of Matera only has 14,000 people in it, which is miles away from its population cap of 150,000. So it gets a huge 0.22% available free land modifier, and which is mental as this can scale up to as big as 1%. You also have a yearly tick up, dependent on your food price. So for example, in the Neapolitan market, we have a 0.02 food price. This is pretty good, but it's not the minimum of 0.01, and that gives us a 0.07% yearly population growth, which is a very good modifier to have. And finally, the most complex one of this little batch is the maximum of a 0.3% boost, dependent on a large food storage in your province. As you can see, this scales up to 120 months, which is 10 years. So how can we check our food consumption and our food capacity? Well, if you hover over provincial food in the top right, you can see your province stockpile here. In the town of Salerno and its province, we have a stockpile of 650, whereas our capacity, province-wide, is 70 there, 44 there, 70 there, and 61 there. That's 225, which means that we have little over 2.5 times our food consumption as our food storage. Subsequently, in this province, we only have about 2.5 months of food storage for its current consumption. This is a far cry off the 120 months. That is the maximum. But as you can still see, this still gives us a positive buff, albeit tiny, at 0.01%. So what's the easiest way to increase this? We can build granaries. So this is a quick and easy method to boost your population growth if you need pops in your game in EU5. You could also upgrade your town to a city, which would give you an extra 250 food capacity. You just need to work out what's more cost effective in your games. Unfortunately, there are negative modifiers too. If your province is starving, it reduces your population growth by 2.5% yearly. If it's looted, it's 0.5%. Or if you're suffering from war exhaustion, it's minus 0.03% per point of war exhaustion. And this caps out at 20. So the max effect of this is 0.6% yearly. If you've got that all stacked together, that can be minus 3.6% of your population in every province yearly. And this can completely destroy your country. This could be made even worse by the negative prosperity that can follow stuff like that, which caps at minus 0.5% population growth with 100% negative prosperity. So that's 4.1% in total. That's mental. There are also a few advances you can get, but they are very geographically and country oriented, so I wouldn't bank on these, but if you can get them, take them. Finally, there are also buildings that can increase your population growth. The biggest example of this is a settlement. It gives you a ginormous 1% boost to your population growth. But it has quite a big hefty prerequisite. It has to be built in a province that has less than 5% of its population capacity. As such, we can't even build it at the start in Naples. So check your saves and see if you can build it. So now it makes sense to talk about what influences your population capacity, as this is directly additive to your population growth, as if you have more free land, you will grow and develop faster. The most important thing to note is the base traits of your land. For example, the terrain. Farmlands gives a 100,000 boost to your population capacity, whereas woods is only 50,000, grasslands is only 50,000, forest is 25,000, same with sparse being 25,000, but something like desert, it'll be very minimal, only 10,000. And then you have your climate. If you're lucky enough to be Mediterranean, it gives you a 150% boost. Something like oceanic gives you 100%, same with subtropical. But likewise, if you're in a harsher region, like hot arid, there's no boost at all, or cold arid, where it's similar. So have a look in your game and see what buffs you can get. Additionally, the urbanization of your province is really important, as there's a huge difference between being a rural location, which does buff your population growth, and being a major city, or even your capital city. For example, being a rural location gives no bonus to your population capacity, whilst it does give that bonus that we spoke about earlier about population growth. Being a town gives you an additional 20,000 people in your population capacity, but also a flat 10% modifier on everything. And being a city is huge. It gives you a 100,000 boost to your population capacity, and 25% overall. Meaning in our capital city in Naples, we can get 800,000, as not only is it a city, but it's also our capital, and all of these modifiers compound together. Finally, the last major modifier is your development. This one is huge, as it grows throughout the game, and you need to really be focusing on this. So much so that Paradox themselves even said, if there's nothing urgent going on in your nation at the moment, you really should use your cabinet ministers on increasing development. This is not only important as it increases your population capacity, which directly increases your population growth as well as your food production, but also your migration attraction. And migration is something we're not really touching on today. It's a huge additive for your population in EU5. The more people you can bring and centralize in your high control provinces is the more money you can make, the better levies you can raise, and the stronger you are in this game. Finally, there's also a 25% buff if you've got a coastal province. And traditional economy as a societal value significantly increases both your population capacity and your food production. It's also important to be aware to not go over this population capacity if possible, as you do get significant debuffs, as you can see on screen, from doing so, such as your migration attraction and your population growth, but also negative events, which can significantly impact your game. Finally, it's also important to use the cabinet actions at your disposal, such as encouraging migration is really good, not only increasing your migration attraction of your pops, but other people's pops as well to your cities. You can sometimes also combine this with the expel people feature. You can tactically expel people from your low reward provinces into your higher value RGO or productive provinces to boost your economy, or you could do it based on control to maximize your levy size. It's also important to check what your nation has too, as some nations have some incredible buffs to this. For example, the Kingdom of Sweden has support new farms in the north of east. This gives a huge buff to migration attraction, local monthly development by 0.1, and yearly population growth. That is incredible. So tied with an admin type advisor as well, you can buff that by double its strength. So it's a ginormous buff that you can use if you're doing a Sweden game. Finally, the last major mechanic about population growth in this game I've neglected to mention earlier is including a census in your parliament. You get a parliament every 5 years in EU5, and you often have the option to conduct a census. This gives you 0.5% population growth for 6 months. This is a huge buff, and if it is completed successfully, you get 7 stability. So sometimes you don't even have to think about passing it. You can just take that population buff and let the bill fail, and you'll still keep that population, but you will lose 7 stability for doing so. So thank you so much for watching. Do let us know in the comments if this helped you out, and what effect this has on your EU5 games. If there's anything you think I've missed, or any tips you've got yourself, please leave them in the comments. We're all learning this game together, so it can be very useful to myself and others as we're learning this game together. If you're still here, please leave a like and consider subscribing. I'm still new to this, so any feedback would be appreciated. But have a lovely day, and we'll see you again soon.